The Senate Banking Committee hearing room fell into a tense silence as Senator Marco Rubio leaned forward into his microphone, his face tight with irritation. Every eye in the chamber seemed to focus on him as he prepared to deliver a pointed critique. The Florida Republican's gaze fixed sharply on Representative Jasmine Crockett, who sat composed and ready. Having been invited as an expert witness to discuss disaster insurance reform, Congresswoman Rubio began, his voice cutting and measured, laced with frustration. "You are sitting here representing Dallas, lecturing Florida and other coastal states about insurance policy matters you frankly do not fully comprehend." C-SPAN cameras zoomed in, capturing every nuance of the senator's expression. Rubio, a seasoned politician and former presidential hopeful, did not soften his words. "You advocate for sweeping government mandates and regulations that could further destabilize our insurance markets. You argue for federal overreach, stripping states of authority while claiming you know better than those of us who have spent years navigating the real-world challenges of hurricanes and property risk." Members of the committee shifted in their seats as Rubio's criticism grew sharper, the tension in the room thickening with each syllable. Chairman Sherrod Brown attempted to interject, but Rubio waved him off dismissively. "The American people deserve to know," Rubio continued, his tone firm and unwavering, "that Democrats like Representative Crockett are pushing one-size-fits-all insurance policies. It may sound appealing in theory, but in practice, it would be disastrous for homeowners across Florida and the coastal states we protect." Through the tirade, Congresswoman Crockett remained calm, methodically organizing her notes and materials. The first-term Democrat from Texas displayed a serene composure, showing no outward reaction to Rubio's critique, as if she had anticipated every line. What happened next would shift the entire energy of the hearing. Crockett had come armed with meticulous research on Florida's unraveling insurance market, complete with detailed records of Rubio's own voting history on disaster relief. Within minutes, she would deploy hard, irrefutable data to challenge the senator's assertions in front of millions of viewers watching from home. Rubio, confident in his authority and experience, did not yet realize that the tide of the hearing was about to turn. He wasn't merely a senator interrogating a freshman representative. At 53, he had built his reputation on defending Florida against federal encroachment. A long-serving senator from a hurricane-prone state, Rubio frequently invoked his hands-on experience with disaster recovery as proof of his expertise. The challenges facing Florida's insurance market, Rubio declared, standing tall in his impeccably tailored suit, demand solutions crafted specifically for our state's circumstances. They cannot be addressed by generic federal mandates from someone representing inland Texas, where hurricane threats are minimal. The hearing, intended to tackle the broader national property insurance crisis, had instead become Rubio's platform to critique Democratic reform proposals. Committee members, familiar with his confident delivery and polished rhetoric, braced for the verbal maneuvering they had seen him employ countless times before. Across the chamber, Jasmine Crockett, representing Texas's 30th District, listened attentively. At 42, the former civil rights attorney and state legislator had quickly earned a reputation for sharp legal acumen and an authoritative presence in hearings. Unlike Rubio, Crockett's professional background involved directly challenging insurance companies in court, providing her with practical experience that informed her insights on the crisis. The distinguished representative from Texas, Rubio said with a hint of sarcasm, comes from a district untouched by the kind of losses Florida faces. Yet she presumes to lecture us on how to manage our insurance markets. Crockett remained composed, reviewing her tablet with quiet focus. Unlike others who had faced Rubio's aggressive line of questioning, she was thoroughly prepared. Her team had spent weeks compiling state-by-state insurance data, highlighting failures, market collapses, and Rubio's own track record on reforms. This hearing was more than a political Clash it was a high-stakes confrontation over how the United States would address a crisis threatening millions of homeowners. Rubio argued passionately for maintaining state control over insurance regulation, limiting federal involvement. Crockett, by contrast, emphasized the need for a federal framework to stabilize markets, protect consumers, and provide accountability as the tension in the room grew palpable. Chairman Brown reminded the committee that Rubio's speaking time had expired. "I yield back, Mr. Chairman," Rubio replied, though his voice carried a note of lingering pride. "Let's remember that some of us have hands-on experience with these markets, not just academic theories." His Republican colleagues nodded approvingly, believing the senator had closed with authority. Yet Crockett's moment had arrived. Slowly closing her tablet, a subtle, confident smile crossed her face. This was the instant she had been preparing for. "The chair recognizes Representative Crockett," Brown announced, his voice calm yet authoritative over the chamber's murmurs. Adjusting her microphone, Crockett began, her tone deliberate and assertive. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Rubio, for your passion. Debate on insurance policy should indeed be vigorous, but passion alone cannot replace evidence. We need facts." The room hushed as Crockett opened a thick binder, brimming with colored tabs, charts, and organized data. "Senator Rubio has questioned my understanding of insurance challenges, particularly those impacting Florida. He suggested my experience might be insufficient." Rubio leaned back, confident. He had confronted many Democratic witnesses with similar assertions. Before typically abstract arguments he could easily dismiss. "But before I respond," Crockett continued, "we need context. Senator Rubio frequently cites his time representing Florida as providing special insight into insurance issues. I respect that perspective. I truly do. However, representing a state does not automatically equate to understanding how failing insurance markets function in practice. When millions of Americans face soaring premiums or losing coverage, we cannot rely solely on opinions. We need verifiable data." Rubio's posture stiffened. This was a line of reasoning he had not anticipated. Democrats often reverted to climate or theoretical arguments, which he could counter without difficulty. But Crockett spoke from evidence. "Senator Rubio is correct that Florida faces unique challenges," she acknowledged. "In preparing for this hearing, my team meticulously analyzed the state's insurance market over the past 5 years, examining premium spikes, company bankruptcies, and policy cancellations." Rubio's jaw tightened. The topic was politically sensitive in Florida, where insurers had collapsed and rates had skyrocketed. "We compared these figures to other hurricane-prone coastal states," Crockett continued, handing a packet to the committee clerk for distribution. "The findings are alarming." As senators examined the distributed pages, murmurs filled the room. Rubio leaned toward a colleague, concern evident in his furrowed brow. A Democratic senator whispered, "These numbers can't be right." "Point of order, Mr. Chairman." "I object to this ambush with previously undisclosed materials," Rubio interjected. "The Congresswoman should have submitted these documents in advance if she intended to discuss Florida specifically." Chairman Brown frowned slightly. "The witness may reference any publicly available data in her testimony." Crockett nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To clarify, all information cited comes from publicly accessible sources: the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, and SEC filings by insurers. Every detail pertains to a matter affecting the public, including Senator Rubio's own constituents." Rubio's expression darkened as Crockett's confidence grew. "Colleagues, please turn to page 3, she said, voice calm but commanding. "Florida's official records show that average homeowners' insurance premiums have surged 102% in just 3 years, nearly triple the increase seen in comparable Gulf Coast states. Over the past 4 years, 15 insurance companies have failed or exited the market entirely. leaving more than 1.2 million homeowners without coverage or pushed into the state-backed Citizens Property Insurance Corporation. Cameras captured Rubio's visible discomfort as the chamber buzzed with whispers. He scribbled notes, clearly preparing counterpoints. "I am not presenting this to single out Floridians," Crockett emphasized. "Insurance instability affects Americans nationwide, coastal and inland alike. This is a market failure, demanding comprehensive solutions, not partisan posturing." Democratic members leaned in attentively, while some Republicans shifted uneasily. Rubio repeatedly sought to interrupt, raising his hand and seeking the chairman's acknowledgement. "What is particularly notable," Crockett continued, turning to page 5, "is that Citizens Insurance now holds over 1.4 million policies, a 300% increase in 4 years, becoming Florida's largest property insurer. This is precisely the outcome Senator Rubio has warned against repeatedly." "Point of order, Mr. Chairman," Rubio interjected again. "The witness is citing numbers without addressing the full context of litigation and storm patterns." "I'm quoting directly from Florida's Insurance Commissioner's report," Crockett replied calmly, raising the document. "If you'd like to discuss those additional factors, they're summarized in page 7. Chairman Brown cleared his throat. "The witness may proceed." Crockett turned another page. "What's most concerning is this. Florida homeowners now pay the highest insurance premiums in the nation, an average of $6,000 per year compared to the national average of about $2,100. And this occurred despite Florida going 16 years without a major hurricane strike before 2017. Rubio's face had grown pale as Crockett content her careful, data-driven testimony. But she was far from finished. "The witness's time has expired." Chairman Brown finally announced, though somewhat truculently, "I have additional material to share." "Mr. Chairman," Crockett said respectfully. Perhaps during the questioning period, the chair recognizes Senator Rubio for a response. Brown replied, noting the senator's visible frustration. Rubio leaned forward. "The Congresswoman has presented a selective picture of Florida's insurance landscape," he began, his voice taut. "She neglects to mention that much of this crisis stems from excessive litigation, fraud, and the state's unique geography. Federal intervention will only worsen these issues." But Crockett had anticipated that. As Rubio spoke, Shea handed another set of documents to the clerk. "Data comparing other state-assessable insurance reforms, parliamentary inquiry." "Mr. Chairman," Crockett said immediately after Rubio finished, "may I respond to direct claims about my understanding of this object?" Chairman Brown, aware that C-SPAN's audience had likely grown during the exchange, nodded. The witness recognized for 5 minutes. The room fell silent as Jasmine Crockett stood composed and self-assured. Her years as a courtroom attorney were evident in her steady posture and controlled tone. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Crockett began. "Senator Rubio says, I've presented a selective picture of Florida's problems. Let's widen the view." She motioned toward the new packet being distributed. This second handout compares insurance reforms in states with similar coastal exposure and the results they produced. Rubio flipped through the pages. His discomfort growing. Senator Rubio has suggested Florida's situation is unique and that federal fixes would make things worse. Crockett contended. That claim deserves scrutiny. The data tells a different story. On page 2, you'll see how Louisiana, South Carolina, and Alabama, each exposed to hurricanes, adopted target reforms that stabilized their markets. The room quieted as members read. After Katrina, Louisiana combined stronger building codes, mitigation incentives, and a state-backed stopgap coordinated with federal support. The result, premium increases of roughly 12% over 3 years compared with Florida's 102%. Shedded, South Carolina implemented a mediation system for claims that cut litigation by 60% while preserving consumer protections. Cameras caught Rubio's expression, surprise turning to frustration. But the most revealing material is on page 4, Crockett said, voice firm. It documents Senator Rubio's voting record on insurance reform and disaster mitigation funding. While he publicly highlights Florida's crisis, he has voted against key federal measures over the past decade that would have us supported state insurance markets. She faced Rubio directly. This includes votes against reauthorizing the National Flood Insurance Program, against increases in FEMA pre-disaster mitigation funding, and against the Disaster Recovery Reform Act, bills that would have helped Florida homeowners and densers manage risk. Then Crockett delivered a sharper point. What's especially troubling is that while premiums in Miami, Tampa, and Orlando have tripled for many families, Senator Rubio has received over $2.3 million in campaign contributions from the insurance industry, placing him among the top recipients in the Senate. She held up printed campaign finance cords. These are public disclosures, not partisan claims. Murmurs is spread through the committee as Crockett worked through Rubio's record with methodical precision. Each documented vote and citation landed clearly. The question isn't whether Florida faces unique challenges. Of course it does, she said. The question is why Senator Rubio has opposed prevent solutions adopted in other coastal states and offered no viable alternatives for his constituents. Crockett continued, pointing to page 7. Here's a quote from Florida's former insurance consumer advocate. This crisis is the result of years of policy choices prioritizing injury profits over market-stable-timed consumer protection. That assessment traced Senator Rubio's vote against Climate Risk Disclosure Act, which would have required insurers to disclose their climate exposure. She looked at Rubio. That's not my reading, Senator. That's your state's expert. Rubio, visibly agitated, scribbled notes and conferred with an aide. Point of order, Mr. Chairman, he interrupted. The witness is mischaracterizing my record and ignoring that those bills contained unrelated provisions. Brown interjected to restore order following standard procedure. Crockett quickly resumed. If Senator Rubio wants to discuss the details of these bills, she said evenly, I'm open to that. She lifted a document. On page 9, you'll find each piece of legislation, its specific provisions related to insurance markets and how those measures would have benefited Florida homeowners, turning toward the full committee. She continued, this isn't about assigning blame or claiming perfection. It's about acknowledging what works and what doesn't in our insurance systems. Families are losing their homes or going bankrupt trying to insure them. Looking directly into the C-SPAN camera, Crockett concluded, Fidians deserve policies guided by data, not ideology. They need a senator committed to prevent solutions that stabilize insurance markets, not one who repeatedly votes against assistance while offering no viable alternatives. The insurance crisis doesn't respond to politics. It responds to effective action. The room fell silent as Crockett yielded back her time. The expressions around the table made the impact clear. Rubio's long-standing position had just been dismantled using verified data from his own state and voting record. In under 10 minutes, his credibility on insurance policy, crucial for a hurricane-prone net, had been seriously weakened. Within hours, clips of Crockett's precise questioning flooded social media. The hashtag #ChangFloridaInsurance crisis trended. Nation announced her data sheets and quotes. Commentators across the spectrum weighed as the full hearing racked up millions of views. What we saw today was preparation meeting opportunity, said CNN analyst Gloria Borger. Representative Crockett didn't just dispute Senator Rubio's claims, she systematically dismantled them using hard data from his own record. Viral image of Rubio's stunned expression as Crockett cited his insurance industry donations quickly turned into a meme captioned, when your dinar list catches up to you. Conservative outlets initially tried to defend Rubio. Senator Rubio has consistently supported state-based solutions, argued a Fox News commentator. His votes reflect a principled stance that federal interference often worsens insurance markets. But those defenses faltered when the Tampa Bay Times published an investigation titled Florida's Insurance Collapse. How we got here, the report confirmed. Crockett's statistics and pointed out that state-only reforms had failed to stabilize the market. While we've often supported Senator Rubio, wrote the editorial board, his portrayal of Florida's insurance crisis is merely a litigation issue, doesn't hold up to evidence. Homeowners face a real emergency that mans both state and federal action, political philosophy is little comforto families facing. $10,000 annual premiums, or no coverage at all. The political fallout was swift. Rubio, long seen as a defender of Florida's interests, began facing sharp questions from reporters and constituents. His office issued a statement accusing Crockett of twisting statistics. But local journalists fact-checked and found her data accurate. Senator Rubio declined our request for comment. Reported WFLA Tampa. However, we independently verified Representative Crockett's statistics. They match official records from both the Senate and the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation. Meanwhile, Crockett's visibility skyrocketed. Major news outlets requested interviews. Her social media following tripled within 2 days, and consumer advocates praised her command of the issue. Florida. Homeowners began citing her detained petitions for state reform. This wasn't political theater, noted a CNBC analyst. Crockett showed how police abates should be handled, with verifiable evidence and clear analysis. The impact reached. Congress lawmakers who once let Rubio's confident soundbites go unchallenged began coming to hearings with folders full of state-specific data ready to counter similar claims. For Rubio, the damage lingered. His reputation as a policy authority on Florida's needs took a hit. Floridans papers began running investigative facies, questioning the gap between his speeches and voting record. Marco Rubio came to Washington pledging to protect Florida's interests, wrote the Orlando Sentinel. 12 years later, premiums have tripled and insurers continue to leave. At what point do we demand results? Not rhetoric. Potential challengers saw opportunity. Within weeks, a former Florida insurance commissioner announced an exploratory campaign against Rubio, promising real solutions, not political pestering. For Crockett, the exchange transferred her from a freshman lawmaker into a national figure in insurance and dissenter policy. Her precise, fact-based approach became a model for representatives seeking to make an impact. The key wasn't just exposition Sonstein, Crockett later explained on CBS. It was connecting policy to real human consequences. This isn't theoretical. It's a financial emergency for familia sacris coastal states. The Rubio-Crockett hearing soon became a case study in political communication curves, illustrating effective versed and evidence-driven debate. What started as a routine committee exchange became a defining moment, reshaping the political fortunes of both lawmakers and reframing the national discussion on insurance and climate policy. As the 2024 election approached, analysts pointed to the hearing as proof that preparation and data can overcome rhetoric. The lesson was simple. In complex policy debates, substance can still defeat style. The broader legacy of the exchange weighs impact on disaster preparedness policy, as states faced mounting climate risks. The focus shifted toward what works instead of who's right. A consumer advocate summarized it best. The Rubio-Crockett exchange reminded us that when a crisis hits, effective policy, not ideology, is what truly matters. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more analyses of pivotal moments in American politics. Share your thoughts in the comments. And tell us which congressional exchange you'd like us to cover next.